Hey everybody, this is the Van Show, and today we're talking to my friend David Bowles. Bowles, is that right?
That's right,
That's
Bowles.
right. All right. Say hi, David.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, they can't answer, but I'll answer for them. They're all right.
All right.
Now, David, we want to know a little bit about you. So first of all, can you tell us where you're from?
Yeah, I'm from the Rio Grande Valley, down on the border, like 5 minutes from Mexico.
Whoa, that's awesome, David. So now, David, you're an author, or
Yeah,
do you
I am.
prefer writer?
Oh no, I'm fine with either one. Yeah.
Okay.
Some people like make a big distinction between the two, but I'm a writer, translator, poet, all kinds of things. So yeah, I put words on paper.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're a word paperer.
Yes.
So could you tell us how early on did you start writing?
Well, I mean, I guess I started like spinning out stories before I started writing. So as a kid, I used to make these elaborate games of make believe with my brothers and all the kids in the neighborhood, and I'd sign them roles and tell them like basically script out their. It wasn't particularly fun for them, but it was a lot of fun for me to kind of like make them all like, do these elaborate things, and then eventually I began like plotting out my own like science fiction or fantasy stories. I just did a lot of world building. Because I was a big reader. I got started reading when I was a very little kid. My mom taught me to read when I was 4, before I went to school. And so when I got to kindergarten, and the very first day of kindergarten, the teacher started showing the letter A on the chalkboard. She was like, "Okay, boys and girls, today we're going to be learning the letter A." And I sat there thinking to myself, you have got to be kidding me. We're not going to go letter by letter one day at a time. I already know how to read. So you know what I did? This is really kind of embarrassing. I dropped out of kindergarten.
Whoa, you
Yeah,
could do that?
I was a rebel. Well, back then you could. Kindergarten, even today, is not like a required. I mean, most parents are like, please go to kindergarten. We don't want you here any longer. But I dropped out, and so my mom would take me to the library every day instead, and I would check out a bunch of books and read them. And I accelerated my own education and kind of fell in love with the idea of being a writer at that early age. I was already in love with storytelling, though, from my grandmother before. So it was like this complicated thing that bit by bit pushed me in the direction of being a writer. I guess I really started writing when I was probably in 8th grade. I had a great English teacher who taught me, although I was really kind of skeptical about it, to love poetry. I was also kind of getting into girls at the time. And so I figured that even because I was kind of a dorky kid and didn't have a lot of money, that maybe if I write poetry, then girls would pay attention to me, and it kind of worked.
It did?
Yeah, it worked.
Well, hey, all right.
So yeah, that poetry was what I started with, and then was spun off into writing science fiction and fantasy and stuff like that.
And the girls didn't like that so much.
No, and also they didn't. I mean, they were enamored by the poems, and then when I was unable to like take them on dates to anywhere other than like McDonald's and the Dollar Theater, the fire soon died down. The appeal of dating a poet is short-lived when there's no money.
Well,
when you're a teenage girl, I guess.
Yeah. Well, maybe if you turn those poems into rock songs or something.
Yeah, and that's really ironic you said that, because that's exactly what I eventually did. I learned to play the guitar and got into a band for my last 2 years of high school, and that did the trick, I think.
There you go.
I'm half Mexican American. I know my last name kind of like is deceptive in that respect, but I grew up listening to lots of stories about like little monsters and elves and gnomes and all kinds of creatures from Mexico. Like things like the lechuzas, which are these witches that transform into owls, or duendes, which are these little goblins that live in the walls of houses, and if you don't feed them, they'll steal your children.
Oh my
and all these
goodness.
really, really cool little, yeah, okay, that's a little eerie, I know. But all these cool creatures that I grew up with, and although I loved the bestiaries, there was never anything like that. And so when I got old enough to want to do something about it, I was like, hey, it would be really, really neat to create a bestiary of all these Mexican creatures. And I had a friend who's a painter who's from Mexico, who lives close by in the town of Edinburgh. And I said, hey, what do you think about this idea? Let's do a bestiary of like these Mexican creatures, make it bilingual, illustrated. And he was completely down for it because he loved that kind of stuff as well. And that's how that was born. It was a lot of fun.
Very cool. And who told you a lot of those stories about the Mexican goblins and creatures?
Well, I mean, my entire family talked about it, but the main storyteller, the one who got me hooked on it the most, was my grandmother Garza. She was the spookiest, best storyteller of all, and she had like encyclopedic knowledge of all these creepy, what we call cucuys in Spanish, like monsters and creatures. And
Kukuis.
Stuff like that. Kukui.
I
It's,
like
it's an
that
awesome name,
word.
right? Oh, Kukui. It just when you say it, it sounds like ooh.
Yeah, it's eerie.
Yeah.
Kukui.
Kukui.
Woo. And so she told you a lot of these stories, and then did a lot of those stories make it into Chupacabra Vengeance?
Oh yeah, so my short story collection, Chupacabra Vengeance, is really informed by a lot of that stuff.
That's
but yeah,
awesome.
her stories like weave their way into a lot of my work. I mean, in the short story collection in my middle grade fantasy series, Goddess of Twins, which is about a couple Mexican American kids who live in the Rio Grande Valley, who are shapeshifters, who discover they're shapeshifters and have to use their powers to fight off against a lot of the creatures that are in Mexican bestiary, in addition to like Aztec and Mayan gods and stuff like that. To this day, and she's already passed and gone to a place hopefully where there are not a lot of Kukuis. And it's in her memory, I still include a lot of those things in my work. It informs and enriches my work, I think.
Well, of course, and it's not only fascinating, but it's a mythology that not a lot of people know about.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
At least not a lot of people in Western culture.
That's right, and it's certainly, even for people who do know about it, it's not something that they see reflected in the books that they read very often. So, lots of teens in Austin, for example, are Mexican American or have Mexican American friends, and they probably love to read and would love to have some of those things show up in the books that they read, and that's one of the reasons that I do it.
So, well, David, this has been excellent. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I had a lot of fun. You are a great interviewer.
Yeah?
Thank you so much.
Oh, you make me blush. You can't tell, but there's a little bit of rose under these blue cheeks. All right, David, we're going to do one last thing before we go.
Okay.
We're both going to look at the camera and say goodbye.
All right, sounds perfect.
Are you ready for that?
I am totally ready.
Well, I'm going to scoot in. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Goodbye.
Goodbye.